Yo, I'm Sven, drummer and graphic artist at Svenimal.art. That's where I share my own drumming and artwork and where you can reach out to me for drumming or drawing lessons and graffiti workshops. Besides being active as an artist and musician, I have a huge passion for the history of music and art, whether it's traditional or more modern forms like hip-hop or custom culture with, for instance, skateboard art. In this series, I want to shine a light on artists, movements and subcultures that inspire me by visiting exhibitions, lectures and special events. In this episode, I visit a screening by American painter, animator, film director and art instructor Aaron Blaise, best known for his work on Disney classics like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin and The Lion King. These days, he runs creatureartteacher.com and recently released his first independent, hand-drawn animated film, Snow Bear. So, let's get into the groove.
Break it down, 3, 2, 1, son of
With the rise of the internet and new drawing software, I became more curious about applying my art to other media, like stickers, banners and cards. But also was interested in making concepts or compositions digitally to use for traditional media. Until then, I worked mostly with traditional tools like graphite, charcoal and acrylics. Since tutorials weren't so accessible back in the day, I had to rely on niche blogs to learn how to digitalize my work in Photoshop. I'm still proud of my very first logo design, which I now print on all kinds of stuff. But it was a tough journey. I started searching for artists who had traditional experience, but also embraced digital tools. And that's when I found Aaron Blaise. He openly shared his workflow, tools and techniques, all while maintaining that old school drawing style I connected with. Thanks to the Dutch Drawing Academy where I studied, Procreate was a huge upgrade with drawing directly on the screen, and now I combine it with my XP Pen drawing tablet. Whether I was learning to draw faces, animals or how to use color, Aaron's tutorials kept popping up and I've been following him ever since. So when I saw he was doing a special screening of his own animation Snow Bear, I ordered my ticket right away. With a freshly printed Svenimal art print under my arm, I headed to the Pathé Arena cinema to experience it in person. Now a little disclaimer, I won't be showing the full talk or screening of Snow Bear in this video. For one, it's physically impossible with my shaky hands, but more importantly, Aaron kindly asked the audience not to post everything online to protect the film and to avoid spoilers. Instead, this clip focuses on the parts I think you'll find most inspiring. So let's dive right in.
Thank you so much for your patience.
A couple of hours. This is something that I've been working on actually for a lifetime, and I want to share with you kind of my inspiration, what got me started. I want to talk about animation. How many animation fans specifically do we have here? Hopefully all of you, because this is all you're going to see. How many actual animators do we have in here? Yeah, that's great. How many 2D animators do we have? Great. Well, awesome. If you're a 3D animator, I love you just as much. Like I said, thank you so much. We've been here for about 9 days now, 8 days, something like that. We came in and we went down to Eindhoven, and we were part of Playgrounds down there where we did a quick screening actually of Snow Bear. It was very quick. I didn't get to talk about it during the film festival down there on a much smaller screen than this. This is by far the biggest screen we've ever shown it on, the best quality. So you guys are in for a treat. And then they had the art department animation conference after that, where I did some animation workshops and some drawing and looking at portfolios, and it was wonderful. And so Nick, my business partner and brother-in-law, here, there he is. Say hi, Nick. He's my brother-in-law because our wives are sisters. So we decided, you know what? Why don't we? We're coming all this way. Why don't we kind of stay over in Amsterdam and see if we can't pull a crowd together and show Snow Bear. So that's why we're here. So I want to thank you so much for coming out. Yes. You know, Snow Bear has been something that's been in the making, and I'm going to talk about it obviously in a few minutes, but it's really something that's been kind of in our wheelhouse, in my brain. Well, we came up with the concept about 9 years ago, and I had a hankering to get back to filmmaking and animated filmmaking again, and so I wanted to start small, and it was originally meant to be about a 5 to 6 minute short. It's twice that, but it was this labor of love, and it just kind of sat with us for a little while until about 3.5 years ago we decided, you know what, we got to go ahead and start making it. And so that's what we did. And so now that it's done, it's really given us this opportunity to not just show the short film that it is, but really kind of talk about animation itself. And I have so many questions from people about, do you think 2D animation is dead? And I don't think it is. And the thing I always say, the only thing I always say, it's only going to go away if we let it go away. And so this is kind of my love letter to hand-drawn animation. There's something really magical about hand-drawn animation. The idea that you can think of something and put it down on a piece of paper and bring it to life. That to me is magic. And so I want to talk a little bit about that magic now. So, Snow Bear, you don't have to be alone. Like I said, to me, hand-drawn, animation in general is just magical, especially if you do it well. But something about hand-drawn animation, the fact that you can, sorry, let me go back. There we go. You can do a drawing, but then you can do all these extra drawings, And if you have enough time and enough patience, you can do these drawings and add to them and add to them. And you can create life, you can create emotion. And to me, when I first saw, the original 9 Old Men at Disney demonstrate this kind of thing when I was a kid, I was mesmerized. How many of you went to your school books and drew in your school books to make little flipbooks in your school books? Yeah, we all did. So I was really hooked on that. But it was interesting because I never intended to go to art school. I mean, I intended to go to art school. I never intended to be an animator. So I want to tell you how I got there. So, how did I get to making a film that takes place in the Arctic? Well, it all started with palm trees and mosquitoes. So what does that mean? Well, it starts about as far away from the Arctic as you can get. This is where I grew up. This is my backyard. This is literally in my backyard where I live. I live in Wekiwa State Park in the middle of Florida, in the palm trees and mosquitoes and everything else. These are our little swamp puppies that live in the back. And this is actually a photo my son took. I just absolutely love them. And ever since I was a little kid, I've been mesmerized by animals and animal drawing, and that was my first love. Yeah, and he this is our home security camera. So we kind of came face to face, and this is he and I staring at each other. This is right here. This is about as Florida as you can get if you want to be an animal artist. Going out. Any chance I get, I love to go out, I love to sketch, I love to draw when I go on a nice full belly, and he's kind of sleeping it off. And anything I can draw on. In this case, I had an iPad, so I'm drawing on my iPad. And so I was doing commissions, and I had a guy come up to me, he goes, "Hey man, can you paint me a hippo?" So any chance that I have to paint, and another commission for a friend that it was his anniversary. It's not just animation. I grew up wanting to be a wildlife artist. And that was long before I wanted to be an animator. And drawing, to me, I love to paint, but drawing is probably my favorite medium. So these are giant charcoals. It was probably one of the most magical experiences I ever had. Imagine playing with 25 puppies, and they're jumping all over you, and they're having a great time, but they're 500 pounds apiece. And, they're just wonderful. So this was back in 2011. But this was a piece that I did after I got back from that experience. So just more and more, I love elephants, love to paint elephants. I wanted to end this section with this polar bear. This is, around the time that I was coming up with the idea for Snow Bear, I did this painting, and I wanted to kind of evoke this kind of lonely feel. We lived in a little trailer out in the woods in South Florida, in the Everglades, in the swamps. And, when I wasn't out in the woods chasing animals and doing all that, under my bed, I had all of these National Geographic magazines stashed. Piles of them, piles. And they became my window to the world. I never in a million years thought that I would ever get out of the swamps of Florida. It was it was too big a world out there. I never had, aspirations like that. But one of the things I loved, I hardly ever read the articles, I just loved the pictures. And so I would draw from the photographs, I would draw from all the paintings, and I fell in love with the illustrations. And I went to art school. It was my goal to maybe, who knows, but I thought maybe I could be an illustrator for National Geographic. That door kind of closed. I found out that National Geographic, they didn't have staff illustrators. They freelanced everything. And I had already freelanced my way through school, and I wanted to find a nice staff position where I could get a steady paycheck and kind of relax a little bit. And this opportunity came along. I was in my second year of college, and these two companies were coming to our school. It was Hallmark Cards, a greeting card company, and then Disney. And I figured, all right, I'm going to put together a portfolio for both, and I'm going to see what hits. And lucky for me, Disney was first. They were the first ones to do the interview, because otherwise I'd be in Kansas City doing greeting cards right now. I really had no aspirations. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just thought Disney might be interesting. I'd never thought about animation other than, what I saw on Disney TV and making these little flip books. And so I ended up getting an internship. I put together a portfolio. They came to our school looking for interns. They had never gone outside of animation schools before. This is a big experiment for them. They wanted to see if they could take young artists that had good foundational training in drawing and painting, and they wanted to see if they could teach them how to animate. And so I put together a portfolio of animal drawings, lucky for me, and figure drawings, figurative work, and not cartoons, just realistic, observational drawings. And lucky for me, I got into this internship. I was accepted. And so there I am, driving my little beat up 1982 Honda Civic across the southwestern desert in Arizona on my way to California with my little skimboard under my arm. I'm going to go and hit the Pacific waves and go skimboarding and learn animation. That board, I actually made that board. I airbrushed that tiger on the front of it when I was in school. I was about 17 or 18 years old. I had never used it. It was that's me standing there under the O. And kind of jumped some fences and broke the rules. That's me standing on the no trespassing sign. But hey, how many people can say they got a photo on the Hollywood sign? Yes. That's pretty cool. But it was such an amazing experience. And so this is where I learned animation. This is where I got the bug. And I was matched up with this guy right here. How many of you guys know who this is? Yeah, it's Glenn Keane. For those of you that don't know Glenn Keane, he's a modern master. He's one of the best contemporary animators in the world. He created Belle. I'm not Belle, but he created Ariel. He created the Beast. He created Tarzan. So many other iconic characters that we know. And he became my mentor. He's the one that kind of took me under his wing and showed me animation. And he's the one that inspired me. I remember going into his office and not knowing anything about animation, not knowing anything about him or what was going on. And he was just getting started on The Little Mermaid. And he came from a background similar to mine. He loved to draw, he loved to paint. And animation he just kind of fell into. So I think that's why he kind of took me under his wing. And he just started talking about all the magical possibilities. He has this really inspiring way of talking. He's so passionate. And this really wonderful way of explaining how there's so many possibilities with animation. It's acting, it's drawing and painting, but it's acting and it's music and it's all these things pulled together. It's bringing life to the screen. And I was like, oh, I want to do this forever. I was just so inspired. And that was 37 years ago. And I remember that moment, that little flame was ignited in that moment. And it's been burning ever since. Because ever since then, I never wanted to do anything else. When I started, after my internship, I was hired by Disney. They liked my work, and so I ended up starting at an animation studio that they opened in Central Florida, in Orlando. And it was actually an attraction. It was part of the MGM studios at Disney World. We were a working studio, but we were also an attraction. And so we had 10,000 people a day come through our studio and look over our shoulders as we made movies like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and all these films. So to see these films, passed down from generation to generation is really, I love it. I really love it. There's a character that I created for The Lion King called Nala. And I did little Nala. And at the time, my daughter, she was about 2 years old. And she had these big eyes, and she was really cute. And so she was my inspiration for Nala. So when you see Nala, those big eyes, they came from my daughter. And my daughter, being the cocky lady that she is now, she's 36 now, and she still tells everybody she's Nala from The Lion King on a couple of the films that I've worked on. So here you go. Very young me. I left Disney. I had some experiences that were really tough to get through. I lost my wife to cancer, and it messed my whole mojo up. I didn't want to draw. I didn't want to paint. I didn't want to do anything for a while. And I knew after a while I needed to get back on my feet. I needed to figure things out, and I figured, the best thing to do this is to start over and just redefine myself and find a new path. And so that's what I did. I left Disney after 21 years. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. And I needed to redefine who I was, find myself, find my heart, all of that again. Maybe we can be a supplement. Maybe I can, get something out there to the masses and make everything affordable enough that it can go and everybody can afford it. And so that's when Nick and I created Creature Art Teacher, and it's this. How many of you follow me on Creature Art Teacher and some of my other hubs? Man, there's so many. And so that was going on 13 years ago now, and now we've got over. Well, in order to do that, I've got to create a short first. I can't teach it without doing it, right? So that's where Snow Bear came along. And so Nick and I started talking about it. We weren't really, nothing was really landing. And I don't know about you guys, but my best ideas always come to me in the shower. Polar bear. I started thinking about my life and my, that's one thing. If I'm creating a story, I want it to be real to me. So I try to find experiences, emotions, things that I have felt and gone through so that I can get it on the page and make it authentic. And no, I've never been a polar bear living in the Arctic, but a lonely polar bear, a lonely character looking for companionship, looking for a friend. I've been there. We can all relate to that. And that's a universal emotion.
What's interesting is that he's talking about what Pixar, Disney and DreamWorks all have in common. They make use of universal emotion. That's what Drew Struzan was saying in his DVD that was shown in Lyon at his expo. It's all about telling a story with emotions everybody can relate to, not just a nice picture. Also, according to Aaron, that was the reason he left out dialogue, only music, which I think adds to the art in this case.
That's a hand, that's a human hand on the left, that's a bear paw on the right. So, the comparative anatomy, I've always loved comparative anatomy and software that they were coming out with. And they came to me about a year before it came out, and they said, hey, we've got this software that we're developing, we can give you the beta version of it. We'd love for you to create a little short, maybe a minute and a half animated short on using our software, so that when the software comes out, we can use it as an example of what you can do with our new software. And it's all for iPad. We do it all on iPad. It's all touch based. So meanwhile, I've been using TV Paint, which is what I use it on my Big Cintiq. Which is I started doing some research. I asked them what they wanted me to animate. They said it's up to you. Do whatever you want. I knew I wanted to do a narrative, and so I started researching Procreate, and the software is called Dreams. I thought Dream is a good keyword. Procreate, they're based in Tasmania, of all places, which I thought was interesting, so I started researching Tasmania. And I found that Tasmania is home to the world's smallest penguin. It's a little fairy penguin, or blue penguin. And I thought, okay. I know it's low-hanging fruit, it's kind of obvious, but I got to do it. I wanted to do a little penguin that has dreams of flying, and just do a little minute and a half short about a little penguin that dreams he can fly. So that was the premise. So I took a weekend, sat down, I started researching the areas around Tasmania where they live. They have these big, beautiful, dramatic cliffs, and I've always been a big fan of Pinocchio, or not Pinocchio. I like Pinocchio, but Winnie the Pooh. And the background style of Winnie the Pooh. So I kind of was influenced by that. I kind of took some of my influence of Tasmania, and blue penguins, went away and designed some characters. And I got everybody at Procreate to kind of buy off on it. And then I took 3 months and went away and animated this little short. So I'm going to share that with you while we're making Snow Bear. I really immerse myself in research. I really believe in researching as much as you can before you start to work. It's all the homework that you do in order to make the work itself better and less hard. I never say easier, because it's never easy, it's just less hard. And I started doing action analysis. I wanted to create this big, heavy bear walking along, and you get the feel for that. I started doing little designs for other characters that might be in the story, just exploring different characters for that. And then this was the final kind of character design for Glenn, our polar bear. is you kind of get this work under your belt so that it kind of lives in your head a little bit, so that when you actually start to make the film, you're kind of off and running. You're not exploring when you should be making. Without further ado, finally, after all this blathering, that's my favorite word.
That was it. I just wanted Mark to have a little.
I've got a snow bear, and so we want to go ahead, and I think we're gonna switch it over. It's gonna take a second, but we're gonna go ahead and give you the full 5.1 surround sound experience. So, what's that? Yep, we'll show it, then we're gonna draw. Here we go. But I really hope you guys enjoyed it. That's 3 years or 9 years worth of inspiration and then 3 years worth of work. So I know it's short, but it was really a labor of love, and we really enjoyed making it. I like to jump back and forth between writing because I love to write as well. So if I'm not drawing, I'm writing. And so I'll write for a little while, and then I'll go and I'll draw for a little while, and then I'll go back and then a lot of times that drawing will inspire more writing, and that writing will inspire more drawing. These are all done digitally. I work in Photoshop. Sometimes I work traditionally. I mean, I still work traditionally, but for when I'm doing production work like this, I tend to work fully and digitally. It's just much more efficient nowadays. So, you know, when I'm sitting down and boarding, I'm trying to figure out my compositions, my thumbnailing, everything, all in that stage, so that when I sit down to actually make the film, I'm not making it twice.
Here Aaron talks about the importance of good storyboarding right at the beginning, and the fact that he changed his mind about putting a little more scenery in the environment instead of a plane, and also showing environment with melted ice and permafrost to increase the dramatic effect.
So I also like to work hard on staging my boards so that I don't have to reinvent the shots. So, you know, this is what the storyboard looked like, this is what the finished shot looked like. This is, you know, this one here and here. So you'll see I work really hard on making sure my compositions are figured out early on, right from the start, right from the written word into the storyboard. One of the best things you can do for yourself as a filmmaker, as an animated filmmaker, is efficiency. You know, the more efficient you can be, the more film you're getting done and the more stories you're telling. It's already a long process. Don't make it longer. So even the water. This is the painting for the water scene when we come into the shot where everything's starting to melt. And I wanted to create this water that was convincing but not complex. And so one of the ways you do that, there's actually, these are I created a wave brush in Photoshop, a little ripple brush. And so this is actually, there's no background, so it's like a PNG file. And I did several of them. And then I created a background that looked like this, and then I moved those PNG files over the top of each other, and you get an effect like this. It really works pretty well. I thought, all right, that's really low tech. And then I went back into TV Paint with my animation software, and I animated one sparkle, a little light sparkle. And I resized it, I blew it up, I shrunk it, I moved it all over the place and created this. You know, TV Paint has this wonderful thing there. You can create an animation brush, and what that is I created, you know, depending on what was happening in the snow, but a lot of the falling snow, I just animated a tumbling snowflake, not falling, just in place, turning in space, about 16 frames. Then I grabbed those frames and I created an animation brush, which means I could take that and I could paint it along the path of a falling snowflake, and it would use that animation and cycle it over and over and create falling snow. And so all the snow you see is just me painting and painting and painting and painting and creating these little blizzard effects. Oh, and if you want to follow, I'm not trying to sell stuff, but yeah, if you're interested.
But I am trying to sell stuff. We're gonna, just like we did with Snow Bear, we're gonna live stream these projects to our members. So if you're interested, feel free, create your art teacher. That little code will give you a discount. Other than that,
I really enjoyed live streaming. Yeah, I really enjoyed live streaming it and bringing people in, you know, to be part of the process of making Snow Bear. And you won't always get to see everything because I want a few surprises, just like I did with Snow Bear. I didn't let anyone see the second half. But I really do enjoy sharing it. And so we're going to do that, like Nick said, with these projects. So that's what We'll do a little Q&A while I'm doing that.
Yeah, and then while he's drawing and stuff, and we'll.
I can draw and talk at the same time.
So she's a polar bear, right?
She's a polar bear.
All right. So give us a big rule. Ready?
Okay, wait.
And everybody's gonna be quiet though, because it's gonna be in the audio of the thing. So we're gonna get just her audio. Ready?
Nice.
Good. You happy with that, or do you want one more?
All right, do one more. Let's
Yeah,
see.
no, we can. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
There it is. All right, that's good. Let's go with it. We'll go with it. That's one of the great benefits of storyboarding, is that you can see your film before it's made. And so when it was storyboarded, I realized, you know what, I'm losing emotion, or it's not playing the right way. And a lot of the stuff where the ice was melting, you know, I was trying to decide what to do with him. Regarding the snow bear melting, I reboarded it and reboarded it and reboarded it several times before we got.
We all grew up with our art.
Yeah, I get to draw cartoons for a
How do
living.
you keep your child alive doing the things you do?
I just never grew up. I've always, it's not trying to keep it alive, it's trying to keep it suppressed. Because it's always there. Like I said, I've spent an entire career drawing cartoons for a living and getting paid for it, paying my mortgage by making cartoons. I live the best life. It's awesome. And so for me, it's just keeping it in check. And I've got so much in my brain and my heart, everything I want to get out. I feel like I don't have enough time to get it out. So it's not a matter of how do I keep it going. It's a matter of how do I slow down? Sometimes, because I can't tell you how many times my wife Vedanta, on the weekend, on a Sunday, will come in from a bike ride, and she could see me going off to the right, which is towards my studio. She goes, "You gonna go do some work?" "Yeah, do you mind?" "No, go ahead."
I just want to. I think that's a big part of it. But
Yeah, it is.
Another question right here.
Hello, my name is Sven. I do
Hi, Sven.
graffiti and like more kind of fine art. So I'm not really into animation, but I did some research on the Pink Panther, and I discovered someone drew the Pink Panther, invented it, and then other people made it alive, like Fritz Freleng.
Yes.
My question is the different functions within a team, like in a company like Disney, who like director, a producer. Can you tell me a bit more about who does what?
Yeah. So the director, at least in the world of Disney, the director, Disney is a very filmmaker-driven studio, meaning they don't really assign projects to be made by people. At least when I was there, I'm not sure how they're doing it now, but I'm assuming it's the same way. You can go to the executives and you can pitch an idea. And if you have the chops that they feel like you can direct a film and they love your idea, then you could get the opportunity to make a film there. That's how, Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Pocahontas and Mulan and all these films, these were all pitched by artists that were at the studio. And then they were developed by artists at the studio and they grew. And so that's, how that happens. So the director is usually the person that came up with the idea a lot of times. And so they're responsible for the creative. The producer is there to watch the budget and make sure, and then bringing in, kind of paving the way for the actors to come in and making sure that everyone's doing this part and making sure that we're not overspending over there and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes you have creative producers too that help out with the creative. So Chuck Williams, who is our producer, I would bring him in, creatively as well. And so, the director does that. But I love directing because I have my finger in everything. When I was making Brother Bear, I worked with Phil Collins for 4 years, because we would write the music. I'd be here in the recording session. I was working with Joaquin Phoenix and all these different people, to record the voices. And so you get to kind of go all over the place working with the artists every day. Plus, because I came from an animation background and a painting background, I'd sit with the designers and I would draw with the designers. So as the director of that film, I was able to jump all over the place and do everything and have my fingers in everything, which is really a great, fun part of the job. And then, as you move down the line, I don't want to call it an assembly line, but down the assembly line, everybody has their own individual job. The crews on these films, were huge. For Brother Bear, we had a crew of 360 people. And, I wasn't in charge or wasn't directing 360 people. I was talking to department heads and supervisors, and then they would relay to the message and to the messages to the people that worked with them. And I want to reiterate too, one of the biggest things as a director is that I learned early on is that you don't have to have all the answers. You're not a dictator. You're a facilitator. You're a captain of a ship, and it's your job to steer the ship, but it's not your job to run the ship. It's not your job. It's not my job to, I might have a story in my head and have a direction where I want it to go, but there's going to be fuzzy details. There's going to be, elements that I'm not quite sure how to do, and that's when you lean on your crew. And so, I have a pet peeve when I watch directors do interviews at the end of a film and they keep referring to the movie as their movie. The way I did my movie was, or whatever, that really bugs me because it's our movie. We do it together, especially with animation, because you really do need to lean on your crew in order to do that.
Except for this movie, of course.
That's what, yeah, then I said, well, I want to do it myself.
Okay, thanks.
And I probably could have put more into that, but it was really more about the content of the story. And I felt like I wanted to get more of a realistic feel of what that world was feeling like, so I didn't over stylize it. That tends to be my natural style anyway, which is kind of this caricatured realism. That's what I was kind of going for with it.
My question, so what's your favorite animation that inspired you?
Bambi. Bambi's my favorite animated film of all time.
That was a short one, so we might be able to squeeze it.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so we all suffer from perfectionism, right? We all want to make it better. We all worry about if it's good enough. I think over time you learn, you got to let it go. I think you get to a point of diminishing returns. John Lasseter actually does have a famous thing that he says. He says, we never finish our films, we just release them. And so this is a rough shot, but I wanted to talk about, one of the things I always say about animation is that animation isn't the art of moving stuff well, it's the art of bringing something to life. And the way you bring things to life is to have characters thinking. And the way you have characters thinking is to see changes of emotion. So this is a character, this is our snow bear, or Glenn, being kind of sad, but then he sees something that excites him.
She has to do something with art.
Like, where does it start?
Well, that's a broad question. What you got to do what moves you, first of all. What is it? Look deep into yourself and be honest with yourself. What is it that you truly enjoy doing artistically, from an art standpoint? And don't be afraid. Nothing is outside the realm of possibility. Anything that makes you happy artistically, you can nurture that. And I don't care if it's drawing unicorns or whatever. There's ways of pursuing those things that make you happy. So look deep into yourself. Is it animation? Is it drawing? Is it painting? Is it writing, or whatever it might be? And then go for it. Because I'm living proof that you can make a career of it. Yeah. I'm starting to lose my voice.
I think it's a good place to end it. Thank you, everybody, so much. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it. We'll be outside. We're in the Pathé Arena. If you want to say hi to Aaron, please feel free to leave it or wait outside. We'll get you his computer. Thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate it. Yeah, you can record it, of course.
This talk was clear, great and inspiring, not only for animators. Of course, at the end, in the hall, Aaron was flooded with fans, but I got a chance to give him a limited edition art print of my character Svenimal. And thanks to an audience member, I got myself a pencil and a paper and got an original sketch. Instead of a Lion King character, I got his own character, Glenn, from Snow Bear. Now that's what I call dope. For now, thanks for watching and hang loose. I do oil paintings.
Oh, those are cool.
And I do
Holy cow.
graffiti.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I made something. I print something out for you.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit packed in stuff, so I won't.
Man, that's cool.
Official art print.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Is that your signature there, right?
Yeah, I'll engrave it first.
That's awesome. Want to do a picture? Yeah.
If you would do an exchange, a little drawing for me.
Of course. Give me one of my characters. Thank you. Sorry I had to go so fast.
So
So
great.
many people. Thank
Great,
you.
thanks.
Thank you.
I'll put it back and I can give you
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.